And I joined via Zoom by Nicky Roberts. She's an associate professor in the Department of Childhood Education at the University of Johannesburg. A very good afternoon to you, Nicky. Thanks so very much for joining us here on SABC News, ma'am.
Afternoon, Flo, and afternoon to the viewers.
Before we talk about matriculants, and I know that was the core of our discussion, I'd really actually like to talk about the story we were on just before I linked to you. What do you make of the struggle of so many parents in our country to get placement for their grade R, grade 1 and grade 8 learners? I think that's a very important issue to discuss before we get to the point of our matric learners.
Sure. So, yes, it's critical to get placements into public schools. I'm really pleased to see the engagement from parents who are concerned about their children not being placed.
Yeah.
It's something that we want to see in parents being involved with schools and engaging not just for placement, but also throughout the 12 years of their schooling. I would be worried if we were having to go and fetch children from homes and get them into schools.
Yeah.
I know the departments are working hard to get people in their places, and it is quite a hard thing to plan for and predict. So it's good to see that the media is covering it and that departments and schools and the parents are all engaged in trying to get children into schools for the really important.
Yeah, certainly a good point. All right, so it's a very critical time for the class of 2022. How best, and I know we talk about this every year, how best do we sort of support these learners as they anticipate, and you can imagine the anxiety right now, their matric results, the sort of support that they would require. I heard you talking just now about the fact that it's good to see parents being so involved.
Yeah, I think we need to be kind to our matriculants, to know that this class particularly, have had the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic. They missed most of grade 10, which is a critical year in terms of further education and training. Then they had kind of catch-up programs and still disruptions in grade 11. And then by grade 12, the reason we're having the results coming out late is that they were having to catch up things that they had missed from grade 11. Mm-hmm. So it's a resilient group. I think they've been put through a tough time, and to remind them that this is but one of many assessments, that there are ways in which if they haven't got the best that they wanted to get, if they're not getting into the university of their choosing, that there are other options. This isn't the end of the road. There are second chance matric programs. There are more than 5 universities in the country, and there are placements that can happen for them, even if their first choice isn't doesn't come through.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, the fact that the matriculants have to think about not only their matric results, but also the future. And I think you've touched on that just now, talking about, tertiary education. I mean, we're also talking about the issue of unemployment, the ailing economy, with all these negatives as these young people are starting their lives. I mean, are they to change their perception of, how they see things? I mean, in my day, you could choose, what you want to get into, and it was easy to do so. But now, not so much. I mean, there's just so many people competing for the same things and the same jobs and the same studies. I mean, do the matriculants perhaps have to think differently than perhaps we did?
I think so. And I think that's also where we get all of this silly, in my view, engagement about the 30% pass, which isn't actually a real thing.
Yeah.
There are different levels of quality passes in matric. They've run their race now. They've tried to do the best that they can and to get the best quality that they can. But essentially all that does is get them into the back of the queue for a university placement or an opportunity to get into the world of work. Those who are not accessing university can be going into further education and training colleges. There are diploma programs, there are certificate programs, and really to understand that schooling isn't an end point. In many ways, it's the beginning of adulthood and a license to contribute in some way. And so I would be encouraging our matriculants to know that They've written a tough set of exams. They've done the best that they can this time round, and now their future in terms of further learning and the world of work awaits.
Yeah.
Obviously, those who are struggling with regard to finding placements into universities or struggling to find work need to be thinking about ways in which they can be upskilling themselves.
Yeah.
Learning is lifelong, and it's something they'll keep doing.
Exactly. But where do they begin when it comes to, looking at different options, at weighing up, what's out there? Because, it might be difficult to have to make peace with the fact that you might not necessarily be able to do, the coursework that you wanted to do, or the degree or the diploma that you wanted to do, and perhaps you're having to look into something else. Where does one then, begin, especially now when you're getting those matric results and wanting to quickly get into something?
Yeah, well, in terms of further learning, most of that has already closed. Yeah. For those who are entering grade 11, they need to know that they have to do the applications for university by June. So most of that happens kind of in March and May. So parents of grade 11s and children who are in grade 11 or young adults in grade 11 need to know that you have to actually be quite organized and apply quite ahead of time. There are very few university programs that are still open. What is possible is to look with regard to further education and training colleges, to think about trying to get a learnership. So those are through the sector education and training authorities, and they target people with grade 10, 11 or 12, and you can get some work experience through that, and that would be through the sector education and training authorities. Most of that these days happens online, so starting to look at career guidance and job opportunities online, as well as knowing about what the further studying options are. If you aren't getting in for something into 2023, there are ways in which there's an intake in June, or otherwise waiting for 2024. Universities are very different to schools, so are colleges and learnerships. Nobody really cares how old you are, as long as you're keen, committed to be arriving on time, doing the work that's needed. You can still succeed, even if it's happening when you're 20, 21.
All right, Nicky, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for giving us your time here on SABC. Thanks so much. That is Nicky Roberts. She's an associate professor in the Department of Childhood Education at the University of Johannesburg.